slow burn nowadays. So you better make them enemies to lovers in book 1 because that's what you said that this book was about. And these consumers, hey, they don't have any attention span to wait till book 2 for this, all right? All of life just feels like it has to be done in 1 second of a TikTok frame. Hello, my name is Vanessa, and I wanted to pop on here because I had this train of thought, and I didn't do any like scripting for this or anything, but I just wanted to throw it out into the world and see if this tracks to anybody else. Like, is this anything? Because I was thinking about slow burn romances because obviously that's like one of my favorite, I don't know, tropes. I just prefer my romances to be slow burn. I know many people on the internet also prefer that. I don't typically see that people prefer insta-love. It's usually like the most hated thing in romance books or anything with a romance subplot. So I was thinking about like why compared to when I was younger, it feels like slow burn is so much faster than it used to be. And I was trying to figure out if this was just like my perception because I'm older or if this is something that might actually be like a consequence of a couple different things happening within like the publishing industry and marketing tactics and just the fast pacedness and the immediacy, I guess, of our trend cycles, you know, including like BookTok and BookTube and just the internet in general and just how everything is so right now. Like there was a link that was made in my head that I think could have some legs, that it's a little related. I'm not here to claim that it's the only reason why a lot of books aren't slow burn or that there's no real slow burn books, but why is it that so many books now refuse to let you wait for the main couple to get together, like past book 1. Like there always has to be a romantic milestone that happens within the first book if a book is marketed as having a romantic subplot. I actively went searching for books, like fantasy books in particular, that had a romance subplot that started maybe in book 2 or 3 or like wasn't explicitly romantic until that point, because that's actually how I prefer romance. I've said before, and this is just me speaking on my own behalf, but my personal least favorite part of a romantic subplot is actually the romance, because I like the slow burn, I like the tension, I like the chase, and I know a lot of other people do too. People are literally begging for it, but at the same time, I see people online saying, I want slow burn, I want slow burn, I want slow burn, and then when a couple doesn't kiss within book 1, by 60% in, they go, ugh, this is boring, this is too slow. So which is it? I remember reading like YA books in 2010 where there wasn't this expectation that the couple was going to get together in book 1. Like when I read Cassandra Clare's Mortal Instruments series for the first time, like obviously it was pretty implicitly implied that Clary and Jace were going to be together in the long term. But like part of why I kept reading that book at the time was I loved watching their romance unfold, though I'm pretty sure like that really wouldn't hold up anymore. And once they got together is when I started being uninterested. So I'm speaking about this from a place of this is my own personal interest and my own personal investment in this trope. And it's also not that serious and it doesn't matter that much, but I just wanted to talk about some of my thoughts on it. There are so many videos that you could find right now, so I'm not going to go into this myself, about how the publishing industry is moving so fast right now. Like it feels like trend cycles for books are just speeding up and up and up and up and up. And BookTok and BookTube, sorry, it's getting darker. BookTok and BookTube are kind of like making that cascade even faster. And I'm not blaming publishing only, because I do think that they're just trying to respond to like the customer or like the reader demands. It all kind of goes back to the contentification of BookTok and BookTube in general, and just social media spaces, and just how social media algorithms work nowadays, where it wants you to need immediate adrenaline hits. So people and creators in particular have this implicit pressure to post as often as possible about as many books as possible, which is where you get into this whole thing about, you know, the aesthetics of being a reader, or like the act of reading being more important than actual reading. You know, the pressure to keep up with industry trends, the pressure to keep up with new releases so that you can be one of the content creators who's the first to make a video that's I read Silver Elite so you don't have to, you know, to get the most clicks because of those adrenaline hits. And I do think like, I mean, I do this as well. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do this or that you're seeking validation in some way. We're all just kind of trying to keep our head above water with these trends on BookTok and BookTube. It's really hard to de-influence ourselves as consumers and as content creators around books from that impulse to want to keep our fingers on the pulse, to want to be in the know, to be in the conversation. But it's really, really hard to do that when TikTok's algorithm is based off of how quickly you can capture someone's attention within 1 second of pure heuristics. So you have like 10 seconds of a trending audio to post 6 book recs. You know what I mean? It's hard to make meaningful book recs in that time that's based on anything less than tropes, basically, because they're a shortcut to communicating what consumers want to hear. They want to know if there's the one bed trope. They want to know if it's enemies to lovers. They want to know if there's a knife to the throat scene. They want to know if it's a bodyguard romance. They want to know if it's slow burn. They need to know it's a pregnancy trope so that they don't read it. You know, these are shorthands that we've kind of evolved so that we can communicate effectively within these super, super fast, very immediate short form content spaces. And a lot of people have talked about how, you know, that's kind of ruining in a way, or it's altered in a negative way, reader spaces and reviewer spaces. And I do agree with that. It's pretty exhausting. As much as I've loved posting as consistently as I have for the past year, there is this pressure I feel is like, oh my gosh, I keep reading all these indie books. Like I need to be reading the, you know, new YA romantasy release that just came out so that people are going to want to click on my thumbnail or keep watching past the first 1 second of my TikTok, so long as I have that cover there. Even though what I really want is for people to pay attention meaningfully to my opinions on books and my analysis of certain things. And I do want to cultivate that space ultimately on my channel. But also I'm trying to be realistic about what actually gets clicks. And so we're kind of struggling with that as a reader space. A lot of publishers are also in the reader spaces the way that we are, paying attention to the way that we interact with the space, the way that everything is so fast, the way that people do want to use these book trope marketing shorthands to get their point across. And I think it's impacting the way that books are being published, like the speed at which we are demanding books to be published. Okay, so here was my train of thought, so bear with me. And I could be totally off base because I just am turning off my camera to like lay out my thoughts instead of turning on TikTok to do this. I had this thought that was like, why is it that when something was a slow burn romance, it used to mean, oh, I won't expect this in the first book then. Oh, okay, this will be like a 5-book series and this will like build up over the series. And same thing in TV shows, like, oh, it's a slow burn romance. You know, we used to have on cable TV, one season of a TV show would be 22 episodes. Granted, it would be released like all within 1 year typically, but in a slow burn romance, when you had something like Balark or Damon and Elena or something like that, we would expect it to take more than one season, more than 22 episodes, or more than 15 episodes to get any sort of build up. And honestly, that build up, that tension, just how long it dragged out, like freaking Emma Swan and Captain Hook, like that taking 3.5 seasons was like so delicious at the time. Like you really just had to be there. But you know, let me use this example as TV since I'm already here. Sorry if this is so scattered. It's harder now that TV shows are all on streaming and we only get 8-episode seasons, right? Which all are filmed within 1 year and there's like 2 years between seasons to have a slow burn couple. Like we just don't have the time anymore because these streaming shows only have 8 episodes. They take so long to produce, they're so expensive, and streaming platforms are so trigger happy. They're so excited to cancel TV shows, and it used to not be that way. And we used to have 22 episode seasons. These actors basically have full-time employment on like rolling bases with like 6 months breaks in between their filming schedules. It's just not like that anymore with streaming, and it doesn't incentivize, you know, shows going on longer than 1 or 2 seasons at most. That's why so many shows that people are like, what? I loved that show, got canceled within weeks of the final episode of season 1 being out. Some that people were upset about this year, you know, The Acolyte, My Lady Jane in particular. I was there. I was angry. I stood with you. I see you. I hear you. It just feels like the immediacy of streaming platforms, the demand, and everything feels this way right now under capitalism. There's like such a quick demand. There's such quick turnover for everything. And I'm very sad at how that is impacting these creative industries and all the love that goes into these TV shows and these book series, basically being held hostage by this like urgency all the time. Urgency to make money, urgency to find your audience within the first 2 episodes of your streaming show being out on a platform. It's exhausting. I found this quote from the Good Place creator Mike Schur from Screen Rant, and he said, like, under the old TV model, if a show was a success, its creators stood to get rich on the back end of profits with all of linear TV's revenue streams combined. A studio might bring in $3 for every $1 and costs on a hit. The problem for writers was that most shows flopped, so there was no back end to get a piece of. Streamers offered something different. Their model, called Cost Plus, might pay $1.30 to $1.50 up front for making every show a winner. Just not a very big one. To make up for the lost back end, streamers floated performance-based incentives. Schur describes a scenario in which a platform might promise a showrunner a $100,000 bonus for season 1, $250,000 bonus for season 2, $550,000 for season 3, so on. So you're like, holy shit, this is great, he says. There was a catch. Many seemingly successful series began to vanish after just a couple of seasons. What no one saw coming was they just kill a show before it ever had to pay that money out, Schur says. They kind of tricked everybody. Now, if you want to get to 20 episodes, it's a miracle. So basically, these streaming platforms are like offering this incentive to get to a certain amount of seasons, but then not allowing these TV shows the time to actually grow an audience. Like, they're doing that on purpose, and it's killing the TV show industry. And honestly, it's kind of ruining fandom spaces as well. People who like to engage in TV shows for like over the course of years, like you just don't have that sort of longevity in TV anymore. And so I kind of want to compare that to the status of publishing. We can kind of make a loose comparison. It might be a little bit less dramatic because publishing hasn't made a huge switch the way that cable did to streaming platforms, but they are still getting used to the book community taking space on short form media platforms like TikTok, like Bookstagram, like shorts, reels, everything like that. And they're trying to respond to how everyone has to work within heuristics nowadays. You have, like I said, you have 1 second to get your point across. You better put up a picture on that screen that summarizes what this book has to offer you in tropes. Publishers are now incentivized to offer book deals for romantasy series for someone who, maybe only wrote in contemporary romance, but is a big name, to make a romantasy book because that's a hot term. And they say, we want this trope, this trope, this trope, this trope, or like make it as tropey as possible, and it's churned out within like 1 year. So you end up having a book that is basically just a series of booktok tropes loosely connected through this very thin, grisly membrane by a plot, right? Like that's like a problem that we see a lot. And so that kind of goes into my argument about where's all the slow burn nowadays? It feels like publishers now are like, we need to publish as quickly as possible. I'm seeing books get published and series be finished at such a speed I had never expected before. I remember waiting at least 2 years in between books, and sure, some authors are still doing that, but it seems like the time that they have is getting less and less and less and less and less to finish a book series from a publisher's perspective, because like our attention spans as consumers, it feels like nowadays with all of the things that I just said, is so fast. Everything is too fast. Like on the publishing side, and TV show side, and book talk side, and in marketing strategy side, it's just all so immediate. And so these authors don't have time to create a fleshed out product, but they also don't really have time to create a fleshed out, like, slow burn subplot. Like, it used to be that you could set up this tension and yearning, or maybe even they're enemies for the first book, and then the second book is where they become reluctant allies, and the third book is where they do the enemies to lovers thing. Now it's like, oh, you pitched a book that's enemies to lovers, so you better deliver on that promise in book 1, or else all of these consumers are gonna feel cheated, and we're not gonna make enough money on book 2 as, like, a publishing company. We wanna make this a series, so you better make them enemies to lovers in book 1, because that's what you said that this book was about, and these consumers, hey, they don't have any attention span to wait till book 2 for this, all right? So you better get to that in book 1. It better be 60% into book 1, or else all the consumers on BookTok are gonna be saying, oh, this was marketed to me as enemies to lovers trope, and it actually isn't, because they didn't even become lovers yet. Because people weren't speaking about enemies to lovers trope in this way back in 2010. Like, books are being, like, prescribed with the enemies to lovers trope before they're even, like, written or marketed, when it used to be that a book series would come out, it would be sold to readers, and we would all read it, and then after the fact, the fan base and the fandom would then label it enemies to lovers based on the content of that book. We're doing, like, It's like the opposite. Does that make sense? I hope I'm explaining this well. I'm really doing this off the cuff, so just saying. But I think that's part of the problem now, is like publishers are afraid of upsetting audiences or losing interest in a book series. And even though people on BookTok want slow burn, we've like come so far from what that used to mean. It really did used to mean over the course of like several books, and now it's like a standalone can be slow burn. And I also do call some standalone slow burn. Like I participate in that because I understand that this has just evolved at this point. But I do miss the days when a slow burn actually meant that we had several books or several seasons to develop a very fleshed out, like, romantic subplot that was actually a plot in of itself, that had conflict and had resolutions and had all of these steps to get there. And now we have so little time. We have so little time to develop it. We have so little time to write it. We have so little time to market it. We have so little time to review it. We have 1 second of a TikTok frame, basically. Like all of life just feels like it has to be done in 1 second of a TikTok frame. I genuinely love slow burn romance. I'm hoping that there's a way on the horizon that we can slow down a bit and bring back that love for slow burn that takes place over the course of several books. I know that there are actually several authors that are doing this right now, like Penn Cole, for example, is one that people keep bringing up to me, so I really appreciate that. But I noticed that consumers too ask for a slow burn, but if this slow burn doesn't end in a kiss in 60% into book 1, then they claim, oh, you guys said that this was going to be a romance and there's no romance in this. It's like, yeah, but it's a slow burn. But that's not what it means anymore. I hope that made sense. If anyone has recommendations for slow burn romances that are over the course of a series, like my reference for this goes back to like pre-2010 book series when there was a little bit less urgency, you know? So if there's anything modern that you guys can think of, please let me know. Also, like, do you agree with this or am I off base? I just thought this was something that had legs. Overall, the problem is that there's no more slow burn. Like that's kind of a non-issue, but it is a symptom of this grander issue with how immediate everything is under this late stage capitalism, and you know how that capitalism is tarnishing a lot of these creative industries because everything is so urgent and shoddy nowadays. Do you know what I mean? I hope you know what I mean. Okay. I'm gonna go. Bye.